Building a custom home is one of those decisions where the gap between what people expect going in and what they actually experience can be pretty wide. And Raleigh in particular has a set of dynamics right now that make the process different from what it would have been even 5 or 6 years ago, and definitely different from what it looks like in other parts of the country. So if you're thinking about building custom in this market, there are some things worth understanding before you start, because the decisions that you make in the first few months end up shaping pretty much everything that happens after. Now I've already talked about picking your builders and questions to ask, so what I'm gonna walk through today is 5 different items. And here's what I wanna cover. First, I wanna talk about the land question, because in Raleigh and the greater area, that's become more complicated than people realize, and it affects everything downstream. Then I wanna talk about the timeline, because the schedule conversation in this market could be significantly different from what you hear in a slower or smaller city or a busier city. You just have that as market dependent. You have to understand that. So after that, I'll get into the cost side, including some things specific to Raleigh that drive numbers up in ways that aren't necessarily obvious up front. Then I want to talk about the builder selection question, because in a market that's grown this fast, the spread between builders has gotten wider. And finally, I want to talk about design and how the choices you make at the design stage interact with all of the above. None of these are independent. They all feed into each other, which is part of why building custom is much harder than people expect. So let me start with land, because nothing else matters if you don't get this part right. Raleigh has grown significantly over the last decade, and the pressure on residential land inside the better neighborhoods has gone up with it. What that means practically is that the lots most people would actually want to build on, the ones inside the Beltline, in North Hills, in Northridge, and McGregor, those established neighborhoods with good schools and walkability, are either already built on, they're owned by someone who is not selling, or they're being sold at a premium price that escalates your budget very quickly. So the first real decision is whether you're buying a lot. You're buying a teardown, or you're gonna build further out where it's just raw land that's available. Each of these paths has different costs, different timelines, and different constraints. And a lot of people start the process without really understanding which one they're on. So teardowns, they deserve a specific note here, because they've become much more common in Raleigh, and they come with complications that surprise people. You're not just paying for the lot. You're paying for an existing house, not necessarily the value of the house, but the value of that land that it sits on. Then you have to add in demolition, and grading and clearing to get a new house ready, along with any carry that is being associated with the permitting to get you through demolition, to get you to a buildable lot. So that difference is what makes it so much different to build on that infill teardown lot versus one that is a clean raw lot from the start. Also, the infrastructure on these older lots can be a wild card. You might not have a sewer connection, might be a well versus water service, the condition of the existing grading. You might have a pipe underground, you might have a tank underground. All these are kind of unknowns that can add real money to a project that does not show up in your original budget if you don't know how to look for it. The lot itself also may have setbacks, easements, tree ordinances, or zoning conditions that significantly limit what you can actually build there. That is where a lot of people get it wrong. I've seen people buy a teardown thinking they were gonna put a 2-story, 40-foot tall house on it, then find out months later that the lot doesn't support it because it's in a restricted zone with covenants that does not allow you to do it. So the land question is not just about price, it's about really understanding what the lot will let you do to it before you commit to it. That is why you need an expert on your side, either a builder that's gonna walk that path with you as a partner, or an agent who knows these differences intimately and they can help guide you in that decision. In a perfect world, I think you should be working with a builder. So find your builder to then help you find your lot. The second consideration is timeline. And this is where I think Raleigh expectations have drifted out of line with reality. People hear stories from friends who built 10 years ago, when a custom home in this market, might have taken 12 months from a contract to closing. That's not the timeline anymore. Between the design phase, the permitting process, which has nearly doubled in 2 to 3 years, the trade availability, and the increased complexity of what people are building, you should plan on something between 15 and 24 months from when you start the serious design conversations to when you're actually gonna move in. This even is more dependent on who you're working with, and that goes builder, designer, architect, all the above. So sometimes it's longer, depending on your scope. As I said, permitting alone in Raleigh and Wake County has gotten longer than it used to be. In my opinion, longer than it should be, but that's an entirely different subject. The inspection process takes time, the review process takes time. Then you have your trades that actually want to work, the ones that do a good work at a high level for a custom home. They're usually booked out months in advance. So if they get behind, if rain comes and it delays them, it does delay your house because you don't want just anybody building on it. And none of that is anyone's fault in particular. It's just the reality of a market that's grown faster than the infrastructure supporting it. So what this means for you is that you need to plan your life around a longer timeline you might expect. I recommend you talk to people who are just recently finished with a build, someone that's in a build with your builder, and get a realistic understanding of that timeline, because everybody does it a little bit differently. So find out what it really is, and then add on a little bit of contingency time to protect yourselves. Because if you're selling an existing house to build, the gap between when you sell and when you can move in is real. And you just have to figure out where you're living during that time, because I promise you, you do not want to rush getting into your house. If you're planning around a school year, a job change, a baby on the way, those plans have to be built in around the timeline, the real timeline, not the optimistic one. The builders who set realistic expectations up front tend to be the ones who can actually meet those timelines and leave you happier and less stressed. The ones that are gonna tell you what you wanna hear are the ones whose projects, they run a year long, they don't get done on time, you have no contingency plan, you have no home to go to, you get stressed out, you move into a home that's not done, and then you spend a year trying to get your builder to finish the house. Please get references. So when you're interviewing builders, pay attention to how they talk about their schedule, and then find people to talk to about that builder and their schedule and what really happened, what went well, what didn't go well, how they addressed it, how they communicated with you. These are all very important. The ones who give you confident short timelines before they even know your scope are the ones that you need to put up a red flag. That's not who you want, because every build is different. The type of house, what you want to include in your house, that all matters for timelines. So if someone's trying to give you a timeline before that, you just don't need to listen to them. They are not putting your interest. They're telling you what you want to hear. They are good salesmen. The third consideration is cost. And this is where I want to spend a little bit of time, because Raleigh has some specific dynamics that can drive numbers up in ways that people just don't always see coming. First one is just baseline material and labor cost, which has moved significantly over the last several years and isn't moving back. What do I mean by this? The same house that you could build 7-8 years ago now costs 2 times more just to build that exact same house. That is crazy. But it's the market reality we live in. One of those costs is site costs, which is everything that it takes to get a lot ready to build on. An area with mature trees, with slopes, with drainage considerations or older infrastructure, your site costs can be much bigger than people realize. So you wanna make sure that if you're bringing a builder in, they spend some time studying that site cost, or if you're buying land from a builder, they can explain to you the site costs and what they have factored in and why they have it factored in. The next one is finish level. Raleigh buyers, especially in the custom segment, have gotten much more sophisticated over finishes the last few years. The expectations around kitchens, bathrooms, cabinets, outdoor living spaces, and millwork have all moved up. That's not bad, but it has a cost, and it's not always reflected in early budget conversations. The biggest thing I want to remind people is if you built 10 years ago, you need to throw those expectations out the window. They just don't exist today. I wish they did, but they don't. The other thing that I'll flag on costs is that allowances get used as a budget management tool more than they should by some builders. I've talked about this in a different video, but the short version is that builders who want to come in low on the contract will often set allowances at the optimistic end of what something might actually cost. You're gonna see a lower number, you're gonna feel good about it, but 6 months in, they didn't ask you what you really wanted, so your selections are now coming in significantly over allowance, and the project is suddenly much more expensive than you expected. Again, spend time with your builder setting expectations, explain to them what you want so they can set your allowances to where you want it. Then, if you ask them to lower an allowance, that's on you. I highly recommend you trust your builder here, because they build a ton of homes, especially the ones that build more than 1 to 2 a year. So when you're comparing these builder proposals, don't just look at the contract price. Look at your allowances, ask questions, compare them. Ask hard questions about what kind of lighting, what kind of plumbing is standard, what kind of tile can you actually get for those allowance numbers. That's where a lot of pricing comparisons fall apart on the closer inspection. The fourth consideration is who you build with. Raleigh has a lot of builders, and the range of quality and operational capability is wider than people realize. Some of that is the result of how quickly the market has grown, and people see opportunities, so they want to come in. When demand pulls people in this fast, it pulls in a lot of new operators alongside established ones. And from the outside, it can be very hard to tell them apart. At this point, we all have good websites, we all have nice photos, we all have testimonials. So the actual question is how you actually evaluate who you're gonna spend the next 2 years working with on what is probably the single most important project in your life at that time, outside of family. I'd say a few things matter here. One is an operational track record. How long have they been building in this market, and at what scope? Can you go see a house, see how it's finished? Can you talk to a client in the process and finish with the process? And the most underrated question is ask to talk to a client who the experience didn't go perfectly. See if they're even willing to have that conversation. And here's why, is because if they're willing to give you someone that did not go well, that means that they were able to make that client resolve it in a way where the expectations got met. So I highly recommend that question. And that's where these references are. Take these references, the real references, not the curated ones. You will know if they give you references, but then ask them, hey, what is this person gonna tell me? That's how you can start to figure out if they're curated only good ones, or if you say, hey, This one was one that went really well. This was a spec home that they took over halfway through. This one had some challenges. Ask them about it. We want to make sure that when things go wrong, and they will in building, that we're the honest builder. So talk to these clients and make sure you understand about what that relationship is, because you want to know how the relationship looks during the build, after the build, and during the warranty period and after the warranty period. Ask about communication. Ask about how problems were handled, not just whether the house was nice. 3 is who you're actually working with day to day. The salesperson who closes you is often not the person who runs your project. It might be the owner and he might be there, and maybe he is. And there's some issues with that as well. But ask these questions. Who's running your project? Who your project manager is going to be, and meet them before you sign, because you want to make sure you get along with these people. You can even meet with designers if you ask. If they've got one in-house, ask to meet with them. A good builder will allow you to meet with them. Someone who might be forcing you in might not. If they have a third-party designer, that's great. You're going to go off on contract with them on your own, so you're going to get a chance to vet them as well. And 4 is financial stability. It sounds like an awkward question to ask, but it matters more than people realize. This is where the horror stories come in. And before I got into building, this is what everybody told me. Oh, got to worry about your builder shutting his office. And a builder who's underwater on a previous project is a builder whose attention's divided. So you don't want that project that's funding somebody else's recovery. So you want to ask the right questions about, hey, how do you use my deposit? Where does that money go? How much do you have set aside? How many projects are you running? Those are all great questions. Even understanding the lending capacity. Are you funding from a bank or from a private investor? All those things matter. Ask the questions. A good builder is not afraid to answer them. The 5th conversation is design. And I argue this is where a lot of Raleigh projects either set themselves up for success or it quietly creates its own problems. The design phase is where you make almost every decision that affects your project. But it happens before most of the cost and schedule pressure show up. So people don't always treat it with the weight that it truly deserves. What I'd say is spend more time on design than you think you need to. Make as many real decisions as you can before construction starts following your builder's process. So pick your finishes, pick your fixtures, pick your appliances. The more that you defer into construction, the more change orders and schedule risk you create. This goes back to that conversation of go through expectations early in the sales process, so then you can trust that what you have on paper and in budget is going to fit for what you really wanted in the home. And take time preparing to meet your builder to answer those questions, because they're gonna move forward with what you've told them. I'd also say hire a designer or an architect whose work you genuinely respect and let them do the job you're hiring them for. The owners who try to micromanage design from a position of inexperience end up with a house that's a collection of design decisions rather than a coherent piece of work. Ask your builder who they use and why. There's a reason that I have so many different designers, because not every designer is perfect for every single client. And so again, getting to know the client and understanding who works for them. Some of the best custom homes I've seen are ones where the owners had strong taste, but a clear sense of what they were and weren't qualified to decide. That balance is harder than it sounds, but it's worth taking seriously up front. If you're sitting with this decision in front of you, the thing I'd encourage you to do is slow down. Building custom in Raleigh is not the same project that it was a decade ago. The land math is harder, the timelines are longer, costs are higher, builder selection is getting harder, and the design phase carries more weight than people expect. None of that means you should not do it. I highly encourage it. There are plenty of people building beautiful homes here, end up exactly where they want to be. But the people who have a good experience tend to be the ones who took the front end seriously, who chose carefully, asked the right questions, and understood the right expectations before they got involved into the project, and they were 6 months into it where they couldn't walk away. The fundamentals do not change just because the market's bigger or faster than it used to be. Know what you're buying, plan for your real timeline, price the project honestly, and choose your builder wisely. Take design seriously. If you do these 5 things, you're already ahead of most people going into this. And if you skip any of them, the project will probably end up teaching you a lesson the hard way. If this was helpful, I'd appreciate a like and subscribe. If you're thinking about building custom in Raleigh and you got a specific question about your situation, drop it in the comments and we'll do our best to get back to you.